Am I the asshole for having my wedding at a medieval fair and calling the police on my brother when he used his phone? When my now husband and I got engaged, we both knew exactly what kind of wedding we wanted. We are both longtime members of our regional medieval reenactment group. Every summer for the past 7 years, we have performed, built sets, run booths, and crafted costumes for one of the largest medieval fairs on the East Coast. The fair is like a second home to us. The staff are like family. The grounds are beautiful. Picture sprawling green fields, stone towers, canvas tents, and winding dirt paths between vendors selling handmade pottery and leather goods. There are blacksmith demonstrations, archery contests, and full jousting tournaments. No plastic chairs or disco balls here. So, when the fair organizers offered to let us hold our wedding there, during a special off-day reserved just for staff and friends, we leapt at the chance. We would have exclusive access to the grounds. Our guests could dress up, enjoy a feast, and watch stage performances. And best of all, we could have our ceremony at the foot of the castle replica we had helped build with our own hands. Now, there was one rule we felt strongly about. We wanted to preserve the atmosphere. Nothing ruins the illusion of stepping into another century faster than someone checking their messages or taking selfies. The fair normally enforces a no modern devices visible rule during operating hours. We decided to extend this to our wedding. No smartphones, no tablets, no smartwatches, no earbuds. Our wedding website and invitation both made this clear. We also included a short message explaining why. We kindly ask that you join us fully in this moment and this world. Please leave modern devices off and out of sight during the ceremony and festivities. Photographers will capture plenty of images for everyone to enjoy later. Most of our friends and family were supportive. Some even loved the idea. A few had questions, but once we explained, they were on board. Except for my brother. My younger brother is a very different person from me. He is a tech entrepreneur. He practically lives online. He hates nature. He thinks our medieval hobby is childish. When he got the invitation, he called me. "You seriously expect me to give up my phone?" 4 hours. I told him yes, it was very important to us. He laughed. "That is ridiculous. You know I get calls I cannot ignore. If one of my investors needs me, I will answer. I will not be dressing up either. I will wear a suit." I said, again, that this was not a typical wedding. We wanted people to participate in the spirit of the event. He brushed me off. I tried not to let it bother me. I figured he would either come around or decide not to attend. Little did I know this was only the beginning. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. The fairgrounds were already bustling. Friends were hanging banners and setting out wooden tables. The smell of roasting meat and fresh bread wafted through the air. My husband and I were both giddy with excitement. We had arranged for a large changing tent so guests could get into their costumes on site if they preferred. Many arrived in full garb, some in simple peasant outfits, others as nobles with rich fabrics and jeweled crowns. Our photographer, dressed as a medieval scribe, wandered among them capturing candid moments. I was in the castle's small upstairs room, getting into my wedding gown. It was a deep blue velvet dress with silver trim and a flowing train. My hair was braided with small ribbons and flowers. Downstairs, my husband was donning his knight's tunic and chainmail. We had even prepared special roles for the wedding party. My maid of honor would lead a procession of ladies of the court, and my husband's best friend would serve as the herald. As guests arrived, the atmosphere was exactly as we had hoped. Laughter filled the air. People were trying out medieval greetings, learning dances, sampling spiced wine. And no one had their phones out. Then my brother arrived. I spotted him from the castle window. He had chosen not to dress up. He wore a modern designer suit with shiny shoes, a Bluetooth earpiece in his ear, and a pair of sunglasses perched on his head. He strolled through the crowd like a CEO on a lunch break. Heads turned. A few children giggled. I sighed. Part of me had expected this. I whispered to my maid of honor, "He is here. Just let it be for now." My brother greeted our parents with a brief nod and ignored the changing tent altogether. He stood out like a sore thumb among the costumed guests. Still, I tried to focus on the ceremony. We had rehearsed a beautiful hand-fasting ritual where our hands would be bound together with colored cords symbolizing unity. The herald called everyone to the main clearing. As the guests took their seats on wooden benches and hay bales, my brother remained standing near the back. I could see him checking his watch, glancing at his phone, occasionally muttering into his earpiece. Then, right as the officiant began the ceremony, it happened. His phone rang. Loudly. The sound of a modern ringtone shattered the moment. Everyone turned. The officiant paused, startled. My brother answered the call and began speaking in a normal voice. "Yeah, I am at some weird thing, hang on." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My husband looked furious. I could feel my face flush with heat. The herald, in perfect character, stepped forward and boomed, "By royal decree, silence is required during this sacred rite." The audience applauded, but my brother smirked and kept talking. I locked eyes with my husband. This was not over. The ceremony resumed after an awkward pause. My brother finally ended his call, but not without shaking his head and muttering something under his breath. I tried to center myself, to focus on my vows and the man standing beside me. We tied the cords and exchanged words of love and promise. The guests applauded, and for a brief moment, everything felt right again. But my brother was not done. During the feast that followed, my husband and I mingled with our guests. Long tables were laid with roasted meats, cheeses, fruit, and flagons of ale. Minstrels played lively tunes, and people danced on the grass. I noticed my brother at the far end of the table, pulling out his phone again. He seemed to be recording the feast, occasionally snapping photos of the food and the crowd. At first, I tried to ignore it. But when I saw him lifting the phone to live stream, yes, live stream, our private event, something in me snapped. I walked over, trying to stay calm. "Please put the phone away," I said quietly. "We made it very clear. This is not allowed." He looked up from the screen. "Relax. People love this stuff. I already have over 100 viewers. This is a private event." "You're taking this too seriously," he said, waving a hand. "No one cares." "They do," I said, gesturing to our guests, many of whom were now watching us with concern. "And so do we." He rolled his eyes and returned to his stream. My husband approached. His voice was low but firm. "You need to stop. Now." My brother scoffed. "What are you going to do? Throw me out in front of everyone?" My husband glanced at the herald, who grinned. Now, our herald, my husband's best friend, had a flair for drama. Without missing a beat, he called out in his booming voice, "By the laws of this land, the accused stands charged with violating the king and queen's decree. He shall answer for this in trial by combat." The crowd roared with laughter and applause. My brother looked around, confused. "You have got to be kidding me," he said. The herald pointed to a nearby clearing where 2 foam swords had been set up for entertainment. "Face your challenger, or forfeit your honor." The guests began chanting. My brother looked at me. "Are you really okay with the circus?" I held his gaze. "This is our wedding. You are the one making a scene." For a moment, I thought he might play along, but then he sneered, shoved his chair back, and stormed off. "Bunch of lunatics," he muttered as he walked away, phone still in hand. The herald, undeterred, raised a sword and declared, "Victory by forfeit. Long live the king and queen." The crowd cheered. We resumed the feast. But the damage was done. My brother was fuming, and I had a sinking feeling this was not the last we would hear from him that day. After the trial by combat spectacle, I hoped things might settle down. Guests were enjoying themselves again. My brother, having retreated to a corner of the fairgrounds, seemed to be sulking. I told myself to let it go. I wanted to enjoy my own wedding. For a while, everything was magical. The sun dipped low, casting a golden glow over the castle walls. The minstrels struck up a softer tune. Friends toasted us with wooden cups raised high. Children ran about in tiny tunics and flower crowns. Then, just as we were preparing to begin the evening dances, another disruption caught my eye. A low buzzing sound drifted through the air. I looked up. A drone hovered above the feast, its blinking lights stark against the twilight sky. I felt a jolt of disbelief. My brother had brought a drone. I scanned the edge of the field and spotted him, controller in hand, eyes on the screen. A small crowd was beginning to notice, pointing upward. Now, I want to be clear, our wedding was held on private property with strict event rules. The fair itself prohibits drones without prior approval, both for safety and privacy reasons. We had signed agreements about this. I marched over to him, my husband close behind. "What do you think you are doing?" I asked, voice tight. He barely glanced up. "Getting some great shots. You will thank me later. You were explicitly told no modern devices. No phones, no drones." "This is not hurting anyone," he said. "I am doing you a favor. You can post the footage online, show off how quirky your little LARP wedding was." I could feel my heart pounding. "Take it down." "Now." He sighed, exaggerated, and began maneuvering the drone lower, toward the castle. The herald had seen what was happening. With a dramatic shout, he called to the knights on staff, actors, of course, but skilled ones. "Seize the flying beast." The crowd erupted in laughter and cheers as two knights ran toward my brother. He panicked, fumbling with the controls. The drone wobbled, veered sharply, and smacked into a tall wooden banner pole. It tumbled to the ground. The knights retrieved it and carried it to me on a velvet pillow, as if presenting the spoils of war. I tried to maintain my composure, but inside I was shaking. My brother rushed over, face red. "That was expensive. You had no right. You had no right to fly it here," I said, voice steady. "You have broken every rule we set. This is not your event." He jabbed a finger toward me. "You are taking this fairy tale crap way too seriously. People should be allowed to do what they want." My husband stepped between us. "Enough. You are disturbing our guests." For a moment, it looked like my brother might actually swing at him. Instead, he stormed off again, muttering, "This is not over." And sadly, he was right. After the drone incident, I honestly hoped my brother would leave. I would not have blamed him. Most people would have been mortified after being called out twice in front of 100 guests. But my brother was not most people. For a while, he stayed away from the main area. The feast resumed. The minstrels played. We led the first dance as planned, and for a short time, I let myself believe the worst was behind us. Then one of my friends hurried over. "He is live streaming again," she whispered. I felt a wave of cold anger. "Where?" I asked. "In the merchant's lane." I followed her through the winding paths that led to the vendor stalls. Sure enough, there he was, phone out, walking past booths, narrating loudly to his online audience. "Look at this stuff," he said, panning the camera across a display of handmade jewelry. "Total fantasy nerd heaven. They think they are in the Middle Ages." Some vendors looked annoyed. Others tried to step out of the frame. I caught one woman shaking her head and folding her arms across her chest. I approached him quickly. "You need to stop this now," I said firmly. He barely glanced at me. "I told you. I am doing a public service. People love this. This is not public space. This is private property. You are breaking the event rules and violating people's privacy." "Privacy?" He laughed. "They are standing out here in costume, in public view." I looked him in the eye. I am asking you one last time. Stop. Put the phone away. He ignored me and kept walking. That was it. I turned and walked briskly to the fair's main office, where the event coordinator was stationed. She had already heard about the earlier incidents. When I explained what was happening now, she shook her head. He is violating multiple policies, she said. You have every right to ask him to leave. Will you help me do that? I asked. She hesitated. If he refuses, we may need to involve the police. Are you prepared for that? I took a deep breath. Yes. Together, we returned to the merchant lane. The coordinator calmly told my brother he was in violation of the event's privacy and safety rules, and he needed to leave immediately. He scoffed. You are not the cops. You cannot make me. That is your choice, she replied evenly. But if you do not leave now, we will have to call them. He smirked. Go ahead. I will tell them my sister is throwing some weird cult party and does not want anyone to see. At that point, the coordinator gave me a look. I nodded. She pulled out her phone and called the local police. I could see the moment it dawned on my brother that this was serious. His smug grin faltered. But he still did not leave, and so we waited. The call had been made. The event coordinator informed the dispatcher that a guest was refusing to comply with the property's privacy rules and was live streaming without consent on private grounds. I returned to the main clearing where the rest of the guests were gathered. My husband met me halfway. Well, he asked. The police are on their way, I said quietly. He nodded. You're sure about this? I looked at him. I will not have him disrespect us or our guests any further. He has left me no choice. He squeezed my hand. Word spread quickly through the fairgrounds. People kept glancing toward the merchant lane where my brother still roamed, phone in hand. The festive mood had shifted, but I was determined not to let him ruin the entire evening. About 15 minutes later, a police car arrived. Now imagine the scene. A modern patrol car pulling up to a medieval fair, its lights flashing softly against the stone and wood structures. The officers stepped out, looking slightly bewildered as they took in the crowd of costumed guests. The coordinator met them and explained the situation. I approached as well, introduced myself, and provided my brother's name and a rundown of his behavior throughout the day. The officers listened carefully. One of them asked, "Has he been told clearly to stop?" "Yes," I said. "Multiple times, both by me and by the event coordinator." "Has he been told to leave the property?" "Yes." He refused. They nodded. The officers walked over to the merchant lane. My brother saw them coming and immediately began filming again, this time aiming the phone right at them. "Look at this," he said loudly. "Now they are bringing in the cops to enforce their little fairy tale rules." The officers remained calm. "Sir, you are on private property," one officer said. "The organizers and the property owner have asked you to leave. You are violating their event policies and creating a disturbance." "This is ridiculous," my brother replied. "I have done nothing illegal." "You are trespassing now, sir," the officer said firmly. "You need to turn off the device and leave, or you will be removed." At that moment, the crowd had quietly gathered at a respectful distance, watching. My brother's bravado began to crack. His voice rose. "You are going to arrest me? For filming a stupid wedding?" "That is not our goal," the officer said calmly. "But you're no longer welcome here. You need to leave." For a long moment, he stood there, phone still raised. Then, finally, with a scowl, he lowered the phone, shoved it in his pocket, and said through gritted teeth, "Fine." The officers escorted him off the grounds, ensuring he left without further incident. I stood watching as he disappeared through the gate. My heart was pounding, but I also felt an odd mix of relief and sadness. This was not how I wanted my wedding day to go. But at least now we could finally celebrate in peace. With my brother gone, the fairgrounds seemed to exhale. The tension that had built up all afternoon slowly dissolved. Guests returned to the feast, and the music picked up again. The minstrels, sensing the shift in mood, struck up a merry tune to lighten the atmosphere. Still, I felt rattled. I slipped away for a few moments to gather myself behind the main tent. My husband soon found me there. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, though tears pricked the corners of my eyes. "I did not want it to come to this." "No one did," he said. "But you were right to stand your ground." I cannot believe he forced this on us. On today of all days." "He was looking for a fight," my husband said gently. "And you did not give it to him. You defended what mattered." I took a deep breath and steadied myself. He was right. We had set clear expectations. We had asked for respect. And my brother had chosen to ignore that at every turn. When I returned to the main clearing, many guests greeted me with hugs and words of support. Several of the vendors thanked me personally. One older woman who ran a candle stall took my hands and said, "You protected us all tonight. Do not feel guilty for that." Her words stayed with me. As the evening wore on, the mood brightened. The dancing resumed, the fire pits were lit, and the crowd came alive again. The night sky sparkled above the castle towers. For the first time that day, I allowed myself to relax. My husband and I shared a quiet moment beneath the stars, watching as friends and family swirled in joyful circles to the sound of drums and lutes. At one point, the herald approached us with a cheeky grin. "Your Majesty," he said with a bow. "Shall I record today's events in the Royal Chronicles?" I laughed, truly laughed for the first time all evening. "Yes," I said, "but perhaps leave out the part about the drone." He winked. "As you command." Despite everything, the wedding ended on a high note. Our final dance took place beneath a ring of torches, surrounded by people we loved. When the last song faded and the crowd erupted in applause, I felt a sense of hard-earned triumph. We had weathered the storm, and we had not allowed one person's selfishness to define our day. Still, as we packed up late that night, I knew this was not truly over. My brother would not let it go quietly. And sure enough, by the next morning, a new firestorm awaited us. The morning after the wedding, my husband and I woke up in a small stone cottage on the fairgrounds that we had rented for the night. Sunlight streamed through the wooden shutters. For a few blissful moments, I allowed myself to believe the drama of the previous day was behind us. Then my phone buzzed, and buzzed again, and again. I picked it up. Dozens of notifications flooded the screen, texts from friends, missed calls from family, and a stream of messages from numbers I did not recognize. My heart sank. "What is it?" my husband asked, sitting up beside me. I opened a few of the texts. "Have you seen what your brother posted? You need to get ahead of this. He is making you look awful online." I felt sick. We pulled out a laptop and searched. There it was. My brother had posted a series of clips from the wedding to his social media accounts. The live stream footage, the drone crash, even the police escort. He had edited them all together with snarky captions. The title? "I got kicked out of my sister's LARP wedding by actual cops for using my phone." The video was already going viral. Thousands of people had viewed it overnight. The comments were a mess. Some laughed at the spectacle. Others called me controlling, a bridezilla, or worse. A few defended us, pointing out that he had clearly ignored the rules, but the louder voices were not on our side. The worst part? My brother had twisted the story. He claimed we had never told guests about the phone policy. He said we had embarrassed him in public, humiliated him with a fake trial, and sicked the police on him for no reason. My hands shook as I read through the comments. "He is lying," I whispered. "He knows we told him." It was on the invitation. It was on the website. My husband put a hand on my shoulder. "Anyone who matters knows the truth." But I could not shake the feeling of helplessness. The internet does not care about context. It loves a juicy story, and my brother had given them one. The texts from family members soon followed. My mother called me crying. "Why did you do this? Why did you embarrass your brother like that?" "He embarrassed himself," I said, struggling to stay calm. "We had rules. He refused to follow them." My father was more blunt. "You should have handled this privately. Now look at the mess." Even my aunt messaged me, "You owe him an apology." I stared at the screen in disbelief. My brother had caused chaos, ignored our wishes, and made a scene at our wedding. And now, somehow, I was the villain? I turned to my husband. "I think I need to tell our side." He nodded. "If you are ready, we will do it together." And so I sat down and began to write. I stared at the blank screen for a long time. I had never been one to seek attention online. Our wedding website had been simple and private, shared only with invited guests. I had never dreamed of having to defend such a personal moment in the public square. But my brother had forced my hand. The comments were growing uglier by the hour. Strangers were now messaging me directly. Some accused me of being a controlling sister. Others mocked our entire wedding, calling it childish or cult-like. The worst ones said I deserved to have my day ruined. My husband stood behind me, reading over my shoulder. "You do not owe the internet anything," he said gently. "But if you want to speak, I will help." I took a deep breath. I knew I could not stay silent. Not for myself, not for our guests who had respected our wishes, and certainly not for the vendors and staff who had also been caught up in my brother's circus. I opened a fresh post and began to write. I explained the full story, calmly and clearly. I shared that we had chosen a medieval fairground because it was a place of deep meaning to us. That the no phones policy had been stated clearly, both in the invitation and on the website, well in advance. That it was not about being controlling, but about preserving the experience we had worked so hard to create for our guests. I recounted how my brother had been warned multiple times, how he had brought a drone without permission, how he had refused to comply even when asked politely. I explained that calling the police had been a last resort, made only after he refused to leave and continued to livestream against the explicit requests of the organizers. Finally, I ended with this. "You may not agree with our choices. That is fine. But we asked for one simple thing on our wedding day: respect. My brother chose not to give it. I will not apologize for protecting the space we created for our friends, our family, and ourselves." I hesitated before hitting publish. Then I clicked the button. The post spread quickly. To my surprise, many people supported us. Other couples who had hosted themed weddings shared their own stories of guests refusing to respect boundaries. Photographers chimed in about the importance of privacy at private events. Of course, the trolls remained. But for the first time, our side of the story was out there. I felt a small sense of peace. Later that evening, my brother messaged me. "You are unbelievable. Playing the victim now? You ruined this family." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it. For the first time all weekend, I smiled. I had no regrets. The days following the wedding were a blur. Friends from the fair reached out in support. Many of them had seen my brother's behavior firsthand and were quick to reassure us we had done the right thing. Several vendors even thanked us for standing firm. One told me if you had not taken action, it would have set a bad precedent. "You protected all of us." That meant a lot. But not all reactions were kind. Some of my extended family, swayed by my brother's edited video, began treating me coldly. A few relatives refused to speak to me at all. My parents remained upset, though my mother's tone softened after I sent her a copy of our wedding invitation, clearly stating the no phones rule she had claimed did not exist. Even so, a rift had formed. Meanwhile, the internet debate raged on. Strangers dissected our wedding, my brother's video, and my response. Some called me justified. Others called me petty. Some declared the entire thing an example of modern cancel culture. Others saw it as an issue of basic respect. I tried not to read too many of the comments. My husband reminded me that the people who mattered were the ones who had stood beside us on that day, who had danced with us under the stars and celebrated our union with joy. Still, a part of me could not let it rest. Was I wrong to have the wedding we wanted? Was I wrong to enforce our rules? Was calling the police truly the only choice left to us? I wrestled with these questions late into the night. Finally, a friend suggested something simple. If you want an honest answer, she said, ask the internet where people go to tell the truth. Post it on AmITheAsshole. Let the crowd decide. And so here I am. You have heard the full story now. My husband and I planned a wedding that meant the world to us. We asked for one thing, no modern devices, so we could all be present in the moment together. My brother refused to honor that. He disrupted our ceremony, disrespected our guests, violated event rules, and forced us into a position where calling the police became necessary. I did not want any of that. I did not want a viral video or a public fight with my own brother. All I wanted was one day, a single day, where my husband and I could celebrate our love surrounded by the world we had helped build. So, internet strangers, I ask you, am I the asshole for standing my ground? For calling the police when my brother refused to stop live streaming and leave the property? Was I wrong to fight for the wedding we had dreamed of? I will listen.